And right now we're discussing these illness that in our community that is really taking us off the planet.
Right.
We're discussing homosexuality,
Right.
lesbianism, and we're gonna get to everybody's sin
Right. Right.
because
If we haven't got to your number, we'll get there.
we're gonna get there too. So don't be offended. We talk about lesbian or homosexual. We're gonna get to the fornicator, the adulterer. We're gonna touch everybody. We're gonna touch something in this room here too.
Right. 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 Right.
But we have to begin to look at ourselves
Right.
for existence,
Right.
because I have a daughter, and you have a daughter,
Right.
and we have to wonder, who will they marry?
Right.
What type of young man has been made out there if the world is making them?
Right.
What type of young woman is being made? And those who claim to be righteous and want to be in a righteous community, then they are very concerned, because we have these illness in our community, but then we have a system that supports it and feeds it and educate these sins.
Right.
You know, we can talk about homosexuality, we can talk about lesbianism, we can talk about fornication, we can talk about adultery, we can talk about all these things that ill affect the black family. But there's a system and there's an institution that constantly feed these illness.
Right.
The entertainment world. When I listen to K97, every now and then I turn and listen to K97. How could we allow that to go on in our community? What effect does the entertainment system, the rap, the rock, the videos, the so-called reality TV has an effect on the family?
Well, again, when we talk about, there's a certain God consciousness that is absent just among the population today. And there are a series of things that have taken place that has produced the absence of God consciousness. So singers and playwrights and actors and entertainers, they think that those are secular entities that have nothing to do with God. But in reality, the arts and the cultural expressions belong to Him. He gave us music. He gave us sound, which we know from our teaching travels at 1,120 feet per second. You have a compact disc today, or now you have MP3s, where they harmonize light and sound to produce music on a disc. Allah gave us light. Allah gave to us our artistic expression. And so, unless we acknowledge that our gift and our talent for creative, cultural, and rhythmic expression belong to Him, see, then we end up with the kind of filthy cultural expression that we have today that is more identifiable with Satan and his rebellion to God than it is identifiable with the divinity and the righteousness of God. And I would go back to Scripture and say that what we see in the filthy cultural expression is consistent with the cultural expression of ancient Rome. It's consistent with the cultural expression of ancient Babylon, as well as the mystery Babylon of Revelations. See, they were partying. They were having a good time. They were using the airwaves, which again belong to the Creator. They were using this to promote a way of life of rebellion to the very Creator that gave them the ability in the airwaves to use. And today we have our young children, as you mentioned, who are under the influence of the entertainment industry. I think about the early days of Islam, Brother James, because in the early days of Islam, before Prophet Muhammad in the Arabian Peninsula, the time period is called Jahiliyyah, or the time of the days of ignorance. And during that period of time, the people lent their ears and their attention and were under the influence of poets. Arabic society had a great reverence for the gift of speech and the rhythmic use of language. And so the poets who had the gift of gab, who were masters of rhyme, they held sway over the people. But in that period of time. There's a reason why it's called the days of ignorance. They weren't under the influence of poets that we might say are today like rappers and enjoy this utopia of a life or society. They were burying their female children alive. They were involved in all kinds of tribal conflict. This tribe would war against that tribe, and that tribe would war against that tribe. See, they had a perverse society, and this is what necessitated the birth of a man named Muhammad of Arabia, peace be upon him, who reformed them, who civilized them, and who brought them up to become rulers of the world. And in history records the Islamic civilizations as some of the finest ever in human existence. But that time period before Muhammad is similar to our time period today, where we have a Jay-Z, we have a T.I., we have a Lil Wayne, we have a Rihanna. These are our brothers and sisters. We love them and we tribute their talent. But we know that their talent comes from a righteous God, not an unrighteous God. See? And we just implore them to take their gift and begin to give it back to the God that created them and their talent, so that, or by means of, I should say, creating art that builds the people. And I will close with this. You know, we look at China today. China, by all honest scholars, will be the superpower in this new century. China developed under a doctrine of protectionism. When Mao Zedong became the emperor or the ruler of China, one of his significant acts, two of his significant acts, was to get his people off of opium. Western powers had the Chinese people on opium, bad. Got his people off opium. Another thing he did was he commissioned the artistic community.
That's right.
To put a message of Chinese uplift, Chinese solidarity, Chinese self-pride in their songs, in their plays, in their movies, in their poetry, so that there was a message in the music, and it was a unifying message, and it was a message of Chinese uplift. We need that type of Maoist reform in arts today. We need artists to become message oriented. You don't got to preach to the people. Nobody want to listen to a song and hear a man preach a sermon. But you know, when the OJs used to sing,
we had a message in our music.
They had a message in their music. When they were talking about the father and the mother, when they were talking about "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," that was James Brown. You know, when the Pointer Sisters song "We Are Family," you know, during that time period of the heyday, if you will, of the Nation of Islam, where the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had over 120 cities with ministers and distributing nearly 1 million Muhammad Speaks newspapers. He had saturated the cultural, the political, and the religious landscape of Black America. The artists began to reflect his influence. We need that today, because our children, they don't listen to the parents. They don't listen to the preachers. They're not listening to the teachers. But when you bring in Wayne, when you bring in Jeezy, when you bring in Gucci, then you see who has your children's ear. You're the minister. You're the imam. You are the rabbi. But your word from Torah, Gospel, Quran, or Talmud don't move your babies. Don't move my babies. But they're moving off of a gospel, if you will, of the hip-hop community that right now is a perverse gospel, if it is a gospel at all.
You know, brother, I was listening to the Enchantments
Right.
the other day, and I listened to their lyrics and how they relate to the woman.
Right.
But if you listen to their lyrics, then you turn around and listen to Usher and some of these modern day singers, how they relate to the woman.
Right.
One is more spiritual, and they uplift the woman. One is all physical and put the woman down like a dog.
Right.
We saw the change coming from the 70s to the 80s to the 90s.
Right.
Now 2011, the woman is just a piece of meat.
Right.
And she fights back with her lyrics the same way.
Right. Right.
So we see a downing and a dumbing down of the community and the family. Now, our single mothers, we have to take our head off to them.
Right.
They have a hard job. And we're reminded of what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, that there's no such thing as a no good woman.
Right.
Unless you find a no good man who made her that way.
Right.
She's at work. She's working 2 jobs. Then the children are left to the radio station, BET, the streets. These institutions that are controlled by Satan are raising our children and teaching them how to be a young woman, a young man, pimp, player, pusher, gangster, jigaboo pie. So, what advice would you give to the single moms, who have to work all day, can't get the man to stand up and be a man, to take care of his children, teach his young women, teach his young men? And what is the effect when that male is removed from the house? What effect does it have on the female, and what effect does it have on the male?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because I really want to, as time goes on and we get an opportunity to share with our viewers, I really would like to have the opportunity to share more of the solutions in as much as we discuss the problems. But at this point, everybody's familiar with the problems, and people are looking for solutions. And as a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings, I see that his body of wisdom is an untapped reservoir of solutions for the black community and really for America that people really have missed out on and dismissed. And I would just say that we should revisit his teachings. There are 2 communities here, Muhammad's Mosque 55, the South Haven Study Group, that represent his teachings. And people are welcome to come. You're welcome to purchase his books, his writings. You don't have to come and join the nation. Read Message to the Black Man. Read How to Eat to Live. Read The Fall of America. Our Savior Has Arrived. Purchase the Final Call newspaper, and begin to take into your mind the wisdom and the solutions of a man that only went to the 3rd grade. But by the time of his departure from us, he had built an economic empire valued in the 1970s dollar. There's a difference in the 1970s dollar than today's dollar. But it's valued in terms of the 1970s dollar of $80 million. A man coming from only a 3rd grade education. See? And he was able to put brothers and sisters together and want us to desire marriage. Part of our problem is we don't desire marriage. Young men don't want to be husbands. They want to, as we say in the colloquial, they want to hit it and quit it. See? They don't want to be a husband. They don't want to be a father. See? And by the same token, many young girls don't necessarily want to be mothers. See? So when the pharmaceutical industry produces Depo-Provera and Norplant, then that's attractive to the only kind of woman who does not want to be a mother. See? So our young girls are filling themselves with these harmful toxins that kill the fruit of their womb, because we live in a culture where we want sex without responsibility. See? But there's a wealth of solutions in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings. They cause us to be simply good, clean, moral people, see, who, even though there are challenges in a marriage, but we are commanded, or the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan teach us, don't run out on your wife and children. Stick and stay. Be there. Raise your children. See? Join a community of faith. He created temples, now called mosques and study groups, so that people of like mind and like belief system could fellowship with one another. So there's single mothers out there. Every single mother should be a part of a community of faith. Whether it's a mosque, a study group, COGIC, temple of praise or worship, join a community of faith. You can't do it by yourself. See, I heard Minister Farrakhan say in his speech to the educational conference a couple of years ago, and this stuck with me. He said that as a community, we have bought into the nefarious idea of rugged individualism.
That's right.
When the mind of community is what we need, our mind is individual. See? So since we don't have the mind of being a part of a community, we live as individuals.
That's why the Holy Quran says, "I've created you in tribes,
and families,
that you may know
one another." If you got a young men, take them to the church, take them to the mosque. Know everybody at the church and the mosque ain't right. That's a reality. You know, everybody ain't on the up and up. But if you go with a sincere heart, and if you are right, invariably we attract to ourselves not what we desire necessarily, but we attract to ourselves what we are.
That's right.
See? So sometimes we wonder why there are always the wrong people in our sphere. We need to check ourselves. What are we projecting? See? But if you go to a house of worship, join a community of faith, you know, and live in front of your children what you want to see your children live to yourself. Children are like mirrors. They reflect back to us what we have been to them. See? So these are just some of the solutions. You gotta, if you're a single mother, you gotta have a prayer life. You know, you gotta try to exercise. You gotta try to eat right. You gotta try to lay an emphasis in the minds of your children on education. You know, you can't have your children thinking that they're at war with their teacher. You know, it's interesting to me because when I grew up, Brother James, you know, the teacher's word was gospel.
That's right.
You didn't dispute the teacher. If the teacher say you did it, you did it. You know. But today, you know, and I understand there are a lot of different dynamics today, but you know, you got to, if you're a single parent, instill in that child a respect for adults, a respect for authority, you know, and then love the child. You know.
And loving ain't always giving them what they want.
No, that's the least of loving. Loving is giving them what they need.
And not what they want.
And sometimes you know you can give what they want, but being sensitive to the fact that children need to be appreciated and they need to have, in as much as words of correction, they need to have words of uplift. You know, we know if we work on a job and our boss is always telling us what we did wrong, we don't like that job. But if we're on a job where sometimes the boss tells us what we did wrong and sometimes he gives us a pat on the back, then we say that's a good boss. Well, children want the same thing. Children want to be congratulated and celebrated as well as corrected. So these are just some of the things, and I know that time is on us, that are pursuant to the idea of what are solutions, because we need to become solution-oriented as opposed to just, you know, problem-oriented. Right.
But you know what, brother, you said something so interesting that remind me of the teaching of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and as being taught by the Honorable Mr. Farrakhan. He states that time dictates agenda.
Right.
So your parenting should be based on the time.
Right.
And the perilous time that we're living in.
Right.
We can't raise our children and run our family based on what was done in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s or the 90s.
That's right.
Time dictates agenda, and with that time comes a new body of knowledge.
That's right.
And that's the problem with most spiritual heads.
That's right.
The knowledge that they're using to combat this world is outdated medication or outdated knowledge.
Right.
You know, there's a reason why medication have an expiration date on it.
That's right. That's right.
You know, and that which we give the people for the family, that preserves the family, based off the laws and from God, should be based on time and condition. Right. So if our knowledge is not consistent with the time, then it won't help. We're wondering why our children are going crazy
Right.
in the schools.
Right.
You know, and the root of that problem is parenting.
Right.
One of the roots of the problem is no men in the community. We just have to be honest.
Right. Right.
Certain problems wouldn't exist if there is a man and a man of God there.
Our men are in prison.
You know, our man is in prison. That's one of the things we're going to talk about. For those who are tuning in to the self-improvement talk show, I'm here sitting here with my brother Demetric Muhammad. We're discussing the fading black family and some of the illness that we see in our community, but we're going to go more to solution. If you hang with us for the next few weeks, we're going to talk about a lot of things, because we want to talk about incarceration,
Right.
this homicide in our community. One of the things that I see every day on the job is infant mortality
Right.
in our community. Our young ladies are giving birth to children that are dying in the first week or second week, or not even making it out of the womb,
Right.
based on the prenatal care that they're not receiving.
Right.
This thing about sex among our youth in our community is going crazy. This freakish behavior,
Right.
and one day we have to. How I'm going to put this? Not worry so much about integrating the school system and all these little things that we're fighting over down in commissions and board of education, because regardless of what we do, if we don't deal with the social illness and the problem with the family in our community, we can integrate the school system with whoever we want to. We can go to China.
Right.
But our problem is going to go to China because we're not looking at the root of the problem. And the root of our problem is the social illness that we see in our community. These are side effects from slavery that we don't want to look at,
Right.
you know. And sooner or later, it's all going to blow up in our face. We see it
Right.
every day when we turn on the news.
And you said something that's key. Root. See, what we have in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teachings, as represented by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, is root knowledge. See, you hear a lot of talking heads on radio, on TV, and people are like, well, where's the Muslim? Where's the Muslim? The Muslims are building and repairing the lives of those who step forward from the masses of our people to accept that which God has deposited within America and within the black community to save us. See, at the root of our problem is the fact that inside of America, as God did for former nations, he has done for America. He raised two men up for the American people. He raised two men up for the black man and woman of America. And to a certain degree, a large degree, we have turned a deaf ear to their practical, sensible, scriptural approach to solving our problems. So we could cite Hosea chapter 4 and 6, my people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge. But we can't put a period there because it's not a period in the verse. The verse continues on and says, and because thou hast rejected knowledge, now I will curse, or I will forget thy children. What knowledge could the people have rejected that would cause God say to hell with you and your children? That's something that I think the scholars and ministers of religion should look at, because we have a functionally illiterate mass of people. Let's just be honest. Reading is not a priority in the black community. Many of our brothers and sisters, some of them find the ability to eke out a great life for themselves, but are functionally illiterate. So what knowledge is it? What wisdom has the black community rejected? You hear scholars today saying, oh man, look, before integration, we had this. We had our own doctors. We had our own colleges. We had our own hospitals before integration. What are they saying? They're saying that when we were left alone to our own selves, we had made more progress in terms of being a self-respecting, upright people than after we took ourselves and immersed ourselves into the majority white society, where now we are doing worse statistically than we did before we immersed ourselves into the dominant society. So, as you point out, trying to integrate school systems and integrate this and integrate that, that's not our solution.
That's not God's solution either.
It's not God's. It hasn't benefited us up until this point. And I sometimes am incredulous. When are the people going to revisit what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught? Because those who are serious and those who do research, they keep coming back through millions of dollars investment in research. What the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan concluded decades ago and proved with a critical mass of people was the solution. Not a solution, but the solution. You know, and that's at the root of black suffering. We got to go ahead on and put the cards on the table. Until black people acknowledge that God raised the messenger up for them in America, we will not overcome the problems that we're facing.
You know what, brother? There are some people might be watching the show, and they might be saying, I goes by my Bible. And there they go again. Now, let's be honest. Let's look at the community now. You go into the prison, I go into 201 Poplar. I know what I see on Sundays. When I look at the bars, and I walk down the hallway and I see men hands hanging out of bars, 99.9% are black males on the third floor. I mean, it looks like you looked inside a slave ship.
Right.
Okay, look. If we goes by our Bible.
Right, right.
When I go into the hospital, when I worked in dialysis clinic, see, if you're not out there among the people, then you don't really understand the suffering, or you numb to the suffering of our people, then you wouldn't understand what we're saying. But we're filling the hospital floors, we're filling the morgues, we're filling the jail, with all of our churches, with all our institutions. But we goes by our Bible. Right. Now, and we can find in our Bible where integration was a tool that God used between the slave and the slave master, and oppressor and oppressor. Whenever you see that picture, integration never was the tool. Now, we have tried going against what God taught in the Bible. Now, we see the results.
Right.
Elijah Muhammad taught separation. That's not hate teaching.
Right.
He's going by his Bible.
Right.
Now, you said when we were separated, we had more progress.
Right.
What is about us, then we're separated, then our nature comes out and we make progress. But someone knew that we can't leave these people over here alone by themselves now.
Right. Well, see, again, and I reference China again because they practice the doctrine of protectionism, meaning that they instituted for many years a closed society. But while they were closed to the outside world, they were closed to outside influences. And they developed an internal strength. They built that great wall for a reason. They developed an internal strength that now that they are strong, see, they can, if you will, push the wall down and come out on the world stage.
Like they showed us during the Olympics.
Right.